like getting into like, undrafted free agents, I don't know where my next guy is going to fall, but it's kind of like we were just talking about Dewan Jones. Dewan Jones, we had to draft him. He just has freakish like size and freakish strength, and you can't pass up on that. And so one thing that I've learned in listening to Daniel Jeremiah, he goes, you never pass up on that stuff. And what I've found is the Ravens, they've always picked like the biggest, strongest dudes. And so my next guy is Aidan Robbins, and he's a running back. And part of the reason actually I picked him is because I thought you were going to pick Audric. And Audric, because you guys posted him, I thought, oh, Josh going to pick this guy, so it's almost going to be like a comparison. And so that dude, he's like 5'11", he's 221 pounds, he runs a 4.7. But the guy I picked, I mean, when you put his picture out, dude, I thought he looked like Myles Garrett. I think you guys even said, man, he looks like Myles Garrett in that post. Yep. But man, the metrics on this guy, if you guys take a look at this dude, 240 pounds, man. Boom. I can just hear that guy hitting other dudes on the field right now. And he's got a 6-foot frame. So, I mean, originally I was going to say he's Audric light, but he's not because he's heavier. You know what I mean? So that is a bad comparison, but I still want to keep going with this guy. So he was like a double transfer. So he started at started at Louisville, and then he went to UNLV and then ended his last year at BYU. So, and I was at a UNLV game, and we were watching the running backs. They had some really good receivers. And I remember talking to you, dude, and he said, oh, you had to see the running back last year. And then as I'm going through the list, I'm running through all the guys. I'm like, oh, this must be the dude. This must be the guy he was talking about, just a guy that was knocking heads on the field. So what happened, though, is when he was at BYU, though, he was plagued with wrist and rib injuries. So he wasn't as productive as he could have been. So he finished with 485 yards, 4.8 yards in attempt. But here's the biggest thing. He got into his last 3 games, and kind of like when we were talking about Aaron Jones for the Packers last year, he averaged 100 yards per game at 6.5 yards a clip, which is amazing. The other thing is he had a super valiant Oklahoma. So against Oklahoma, he had a 182-yard effort. So finally he was, feeling good. He got all the plays that he needed to be, and I guess he got his football strength and football stamina under him. So he looks really good. Now, this BYU team, they put out other guys in the last 5 years. They put out Tyler Algier, and they put out Chris Brooks from the Dolphins. So they're both slightly smaller, and they have slightly slower 40 times. So if you're bigger and got a better 40 time, I think you should be looking at this guy. And everywhere that I've looked, this guy is considered a draft diamond. So this is who that's all met with a guy. The Bears, the Packers, the Colts, Jaguars, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Raiders, Saints, 49ers, Browns, in New York.
Wow.
So his breakout season, though, was with the Running Rebels that this guy was telling me. So in 11 seasons, he had 109 yards. He had 9 yards touchdown, 9 yards rushing, and 1 yard receiving. So now you got to ask yourself, why did this guy always transfer? Because that's got to be a red flag to some people. To be honest with you, he wanted to play against better competition. For the first time ever in BYU history, they played 10 Power 5 schools. So he said, I want that challenge. Unfortunately, the challenge didn't happen because of injury, and you can't fault guys for injury, right? Now, after everything that I've said, what does this kind of remind you of? It reminds me of the way that they picked Ced Tillman. Had a monster junior year, and he also had a injury-plagued senior year, right? So I'm hoping that the Browns can capitalize on this guy, because it doesn't seem to be gonna maybe even hit the top 250 for PFF. So maybe this is a guy that we can sign right after the draft's over. I like his size, man. Like I've said it before, he runs a 4.5 to 4.57, and he's a fourth quarter beast. As he goes through the game, he gets stronger. What I dislike about the guy is this is like a big Eddie George thing that nobody liked about Eddie George coming out. Runs too high. But what I've seen in his, watching his actual footage is his actually first hit is low. He breaks through the line of scrimmage. Then he starts to be a long strider and runs high. For this guy, I honestly think he's going to be a piece of clay that Deuce Staley can mold. I looked for the number of 240, the backs that weighed 240. Other than Derrick Henry coming out of Alabama, the other guy that I could find is like Leonard Fournette. So if he's somewhere like 70% of those two guys, I mean, I'd be pretty happy with a guy that's 240 and can run a 4.5 on the Browns.
Yeah, I think I would be definitely okay with that too. And I like what you're talking about as far as Aidan Robbins being available later in the draft, potentially after the draft, could be another undrafted free agent gem. I think the one spot, like the main position where you see the most undrafted players get an opportunity and succeed, at least maybe early on in the career, is the undrafted running backs. Do you agree?
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Okay. I like this kid. I was looking into him as well whenever we started putting notes together and stuff to do this episode. And I thought, whenever you said you were going to talk about Aidan Robbins, I said, okay, I'm going to hands off this because I really like him. I think that has some serious potential for the Browns.